There we go. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I know that Christie's, you need to try to leave by 10:30. Is that correct?
It is, although I can squeeze to 10:40, so I did make a little change.
Okay, thanks. We'll move quickly through some administrative things. First of all, we like to state our committee's charge and also make sure we explicitly invite the public to participate. So I'll go ahead and read a couple things. The committee invites public comment and input at the end of each agenda item with 1 minute limit for each speaker. We welcome more feedback through email to the committee's email address, as well as proposals to the committee that can become future agenda items. So our objective is to be as transparent as we can and have as open communication as we can with the public. Our committee charge, we're an advisory committee to the Wellfleet Select Board. The charge as it's written on the town website is the Bike and Walkways Committee is hereby established to consider ways to provide safe areas for biking and walking. The Board of Selectmen, which is now called the Select Board, believes that these activities should be available seasonally and year-round, as they are important means of local transportation or popular activities in town and promote good health. The Bike and Walkways Committee is charged with the following tasks. One, to work with the Cape Cod National Seashore, the towns of Provincetown and Truro, and the Cape Cod Commission to establish the continuation of a bike trail northward into Provincetown. And then 2, to prepare a plan for future bike and walking routes through the town of Wellfleet. So with that said, thank you everybody for being here. And Rachel, thanks for joining us. You are our main agenda item today. So if it's good with you, we'd like to turn over the floor. Real quickly, let me introduce everybody, or we'll all introduce ourselves. I'm Pete Cook. I'm the chair of the committee. Christy?
I'm Christy O'Campbell, the secretary.
And I'm Ned Oliver, member of the committee.
Nice to meet you, Rachel. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself and talk a little bit about how I think Safe Routes to School could potentially partner with the Bike and Walkway Committee in the future. So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with Safe Routes to School. I know Wellfleet Elementary has been somewhat active in the past, but as the name implies, we work to increase safe walking and biking for students in grades K to 8 currently in public and charter schools. And while our main focus is walking to school and from school, obviously that's not feasible in all communities due to infrastructural barriers. So we also offer a number of programs just to increase safe walking and biking more generally. So just some examples of things we do are pedestrian safety sessions, which are usually 30-minute sessions with classrooms, and we take students outside. We show them, how to cross the crosswalk safely, parking lot safety, things like that. And then similarly, we do bike safety assemblies, which are usually for larger groups of students, sometimes up to a whole school. And we teach them things like how to ensure your helmet fits properly, rules of the road, bike hand signals. And similarly, we have bike rodeos, which are for smaller groups of students, usually like 10 to 20 or 30. And in that case, we set up little obstacle courses with fake road signs. And in that way, we allow them, again, to learn the rules of the road, but also improve their biking skills. So I suppose those are maybe the most common programs we do. And although, again, it's called the Safe Routes to School program, we do work year round, especially in the Cape, where obviously things get busier in the summer. We still offer these programs. We still work full time. So yeah, something we like to offer is partnerships, what we call alliance partnerships, which is just a formalized way of recognizing interest from different community organizations, often like bike and ped committees, park and rec departments. And there's no real commitment to doing this. It's just a way of registering interest in things like either promoting safe routes to school events, if you have a newsletter or social media. And also we also go do other events that are hosted by these organizations. For example, like Friends of the Bourne Rail Trail, they do a trail fest every summer, and they usually have a safe routes to school representative to talk about bike and pedestrian safety. And we also have some little incentives, things like either stickers or bike lights, and we have a limited number of free helmets we can give to schools.
Are you working with schools throughout Massachusetts?
Yes, so we work with about 60% of all public schools are active partners in the program statewide. So my territory is basically South Shore, South Coast, Cape, and the Islands. So pretty much anything south of like Weymouth. So each of the outreach coordinators has about 150 to 200 schools we work with. So we like to, again, partner with local organizations just to sort of build those relationships, because we're all based in Boston. So while we come and travel out to partner schools, sometimes it's always beneficial to have other local partners in the area we can work with.
So you're talking with Wellfleet Elementary?
Yes, so
Great.
they have registered to do two of our what we call flagship days. So there is Winter Walk in February, and then another Walk and Bike to School Day in May. They, again, because of their location, they usually host those on campus, I believe, before classes start. So students arrive to school as normal, and then either bike or walk around the school. So I'm sort of limited in what I can do with them this year, because I believe they're still not allowing outside vendors onto the school campus. But yeah, I'm hoping in future I can find other ways to work with them and do some more safe routes programs.
Christy, please go ahead, because I know you can chime in.
Well, I wanted to say, Rachel, that's amazing, and thank you. What a cool organization. And that this community is it sounds like you have such a huge number of towns to work with, so we'd love to support you for sure. We have actually done a bike rodeo, and we kind of made it up from scratch and from searching on the internet, but also because our town is so great. So we collaborated with the elementary school, the town rec department, and the police department, and everyone is so supportive. So our elementary school PE teacher actually makes sure she does a special field trip for fourth graders. So every child in Wellfleet can learn to bike. She makes sure every kid has access to a bike and a helmet. And we have local businesses and the police make that really doable. And she works with kids after school to make sure they know how to bike. It's a really incredible. And then the police make sure that everyone has access to helmets, and we have guest workers come. So everyone's doing a lot. And the town rec actually donated prizes for us and our sound system. And we stopped at COVID. But I think that, given that it's an outdoor and spring event, I would love to take on your expertise. We did make a obstacle course. We had a bike police officer come and teach all the safety rules. It was so cool, and we had fun music playing and prizes. So you would have a very easy time working with this town. The infrastructure is here. Everyone is so game. Like the police said, yes, of course. And the principal said, yep, you've got the parking lot. And they blocked it off. So I would be happy to be a contact for you if you want to make it happen. we could do whatever level of back and forth. Like if you have a program that you just run and that's how you do it, then we'd be fine to just support you. Or if you want to let us run our old program and you can pitch in, whatever you want.
Thank you. Yeah, it really, it just varies, depending on the capacity of different organizations. But yeah, I guess what we offer specifically for the bike rodeo, we can either host them ourselves or just sort of be there as a resource. And we have like kits. So we drive down with little traffic cones and fake stop signs. But yeah, it sounds like the town is, already has a lot of infrastructure and support for running those. So.
And that may be a way we could help because, as Christy described, she did great work really building alliances between different departments and organizations in the town to help coordinate this and to pitch in the past. And so there is that network, and maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
We also really are interested in creating, our kids have a tricky situation biking to school here. I don't know if you've ever come into Wellfleet, but the roads are really tight, that we're struggling to find a bike route that would make everyone in the town happy. There's really no answer so we've never been able to. We've proposed several pathways that would give kids access to riding to school in each other's houses, but we haven't succeeded. Right now, our town, the biggest forerunner for a bike path is along the highway, which obviously would exclude the kids. So I don't know, what experience you have with that. That's another thing going on in our town right now. Just trying to make a safe off the highway bike path for kids. It's been a real struggle. So the Cape Cod Rail Trail goes throughout the Cape, but it kind of drops off in Wellfleet, and then it picks up again in Truro because we've just been unable to find a good compromise.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do have some like infrastructural elements to our program. Because it is a federally funded program, we're sort of limited, frankly, in the amount of like infrastructure money and grants we have. We have some, but not a ton compared to other programs. So largely we emphasize like more of the educational and encouragement elements. But yeah, it's good to hear, get that, to have that information about what's going on currently with the bike trail.
Yeah, that was just kind of backstory, I think, but Christy very succinctly described a complicated issue. But regardless, I mean, yeah, we definitely see bike safety as critical, and the community does too. And there's a lot of public interest that's been expressed to us in safety out here, especially given the fact that it's a seasonal community, in the sense that it grows, the population grows by quite a bit in the summertime. And so, that creates a safety aspect not every town has, or an issue. But yeah, it's certainly cycling safety begins with kids, and that's a good time to begin learning cycling skills that maybe you take into later life, and next thing you know, you have a new generation of cycling commuters and people who are doing more than doing recreational, but also getting some transportation taken care of with bikes. But they learned to do it safely and survive. So we definitely support what you're doing, Christy. It sounded as though you'd like to shall we keep in touch, or do you have a schedule of activities that we should coordinate with you on?
So I guess a good first step, if you are interested, is just here. I can just send it in the chat. We have like a 2 to 3 minute alliance partner form. It's just a simple Google form asking for your contact information and what kind of events you'd like to, or in what capacity you'd like to help out with the program. And then, yeah, we can, if there's certain things that particularly interest you, like doing a bike rodeo, we can work on scheduling that probably for the spring or summer. Or yeah, I mean, really anything that is related to kids walking and biking is in the scope of our program. So we're happy to help with other events that you host as well. I don't think I can send the link in the chat. It says it's disabled, but I can just send it to both of you in an email.
Thank you. Yeah, I emailed this morning so that you have Christy's email address.
Oh, yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Excellent. Any other?
It looks like we have a community member, Rachel, who's attending our meeting with his hand up. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
Hi, guys. How you doing this morning?
Good.
So Rachel, let me also applaud your efforts here to get stuff done. And I just flagged one place. I bike quite a bit from Wellfleet north and south. And so, you know, I'm familiar with most of the places you can go and some of the places you really shouldn't go. One of the interesting places actually, which is from a school point of view, what I've observed between here and Provincetown, frankly, down to Harwich, is the crossing at Truro Elementary School. So the way the road is created from a biker's point of view, if you want to go from Wellfleet to Truro and you don't want to bike up Route 6, you're going to have to go on the west side of Route 6. And then north of Castle Hill Road, you have to cross Route 6 across this top of the road. And that's exactly where Truro Elementary School is. And if you go there in the afternoon, there are long lines and police because there's a left-hand turn to get into that school, which is very complicated. So just to fly you in a theoretical, if someone had, you know, $5 or $6 million of money that they didn't know what to do with, you know, one of the important elements, I think, for infrastructure, both for biking and for walking and safe crossing, is actually an underpass at Truro Elementary. If between Harwich and Provincetown, that would be my #1 priority in terms of safe walking and biking for kids.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Truro is another school I work with, and again, we don't have a ton of infrastructure money, but we do have a grant we do every year, up to like maybe $1 or $2 million projects. Things like, yeah, most often like sidewalk renovation or bike path renovation, and schools that have been previously active partners are, you know, that's taken into account when we select the winners. It's a highly competitive grant, but that continued support from the community and from the schools is something that makes those projects more likely to be selected, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm not assuming that this is.
Yeah,
I just want to put the bee in your bonnet, you know, as
Mhm.
someone who's out there riding on Route 6 and sometimes going, gee, I wish there were an underpass here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you talk to many people, and so you have. So I just wanted to put that idea in your head should it ever come up.
Yeah, definitely. It's always helpful to hear what specific you know, barriers there are to safe biking and walking. So thank you. Keep that in mind.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Well, Rachel, thank you for describing what it is you do. We'd be. It sounds like your goals and ours are similar, and we'd like to help.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Also, I'll volunteer to fill out the form, and I'll just get that right into you, and whenever you're ready to think about events, I'll just maybe feel out the principal just to see if she's open to doing that this spring. I know the schools are so
Yeah.
heroic and they're very busy right now. So if it were
Mhm.
something that we weren't able to do until the fall, then that'd be fine too.
Okay. Yeah,
Ned,
definitely.
let me turn to Ned. Any comments, Ned?
No, I think you guys have really covered a lot of it. Sounds really good. And I I love Steve's proposal. I wish we did have money to do an underpass there up by Truro. That would be fantastic as a avid bicyclist in the summertime. That is a brutal crossing on the highway, and you almost have to if you're heading up that way. So, but yeah, I think it's, and I think it's incumbent on us or somehow to get a safe route to the school, because right now it's almost impossible for kids to cycle to school. We just don't have the infrastructure for it, and I think it's doable, but that's something for us to work on. And but yeah, I appreciate it, Rachel. It's a great input. Thanks.
It sounds though, Rachel, let me make sure I understand correctly. Your focus in talking with us is on in particular like safety awareness or education. Is that correct, or is it with infrastructure in mind?
So yeah, I'd say the bulk of the work we do is more along the lines of education and encouragement. Yeah, again, we do have 2 infrastructure grant programs. The first is called Signs and Lines, and that's smaller reimbursement-based grants of up to $6,000. So that's usually things like repainting crosswalks or adding some new like pedestrian crossing signs. And then the infrastructure grant program is the larger projects that are things like sidewalk construction or renovation. But yeah, we just compared to other MassDOT grants, like, to be frank, there's not that much money to be given out. And also a little fun fact is that there's been some studies that actually with education and encouragement programs, there's a larger increase in walking and biking than with just infrastructure alone. Obviously, having improvements to both those things creates the largest increase in the number of kids walking and biking. But yeah, we sort of more emphasize the education and awareness component.
Yeah, I think sidewalk improvement, sidewalk and just a bike lane along Long Pond Road heading up to the elementary school, which isn't a very long distance that would need to be covered. That to me is huge as far as getting safety to the school goes, So maybe that's something that you could help us with too. I don't know, because I don't think it'd be a huge amount of infrastructure work to do that.
One thing our committee has been advocating is some options that would involve sharrows, bike lane sharrows in places where on roads that are safe enough for that. The idea and what we've had in mind is let's try to create bikeways that are accessible and available to groups that perhaps aren't well represented right now by the opportunities. That includes children and some other groups too, elderly in particular, but youth have a real tough time with some of the routes that currently exist and ones that are proposed. Ironically, we have the Cape Cod Rail Trail, nearby, which kind of, the main part of it terminates there in South Wellfleet right now. It's creeping north, but it's a great rail trail. It does have a lot of road crossings, and so even on a separated trail like that, of course, safety is key. And yeah, so we applaud what you're doing.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can contribute.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to working with you all. I'm very glad to hear that you, this committee and just the town as a whole is really enthusiastic. The Cape is honestly like such a great place to be doing this work because they offer so much support. So yeah, looking forward to it.
So the committee has a lot of interest. Again, we're an advisory committee to the select board. But we're also seek to again create an effective action network within the town departments to get things done. And Christy did a great job with this with the past effort with the school and with others. And yeah, so if we can help out, or if there's a, you know, a message to communicate with our select board or with others in the government, in the town government, let us know. We can try to help you do that.
Thanks.
So I guess we're offering to be a focal point or your point of contact with others here in the town.
Okay.
Well, great. Thank you. Any questions for us?
I don't think so, not at this time. So I guess I can just plan to send you both the Alliance partner form, and then once that's
Great.
filled, we can just tentatively set up some dates for maybe a bike rodeo or something else.
It'd be
Yeah.
great. It'd be
Thank you.
awesome. Mhm. Thank you.
Christy, unless there's anything else on this item, otherwise we'll, and thank you, Steve, for the comments earlier. Are there any other comments on this item before we move on?
Well, do you think we need to make it a vote to become Alliance partners, or that's fine? That's our next step.
That's a great idea. Do you want to you're making a motion?
Sure. Yes.
All right. I'll second it. So all in favor?
I
Right.
Okay, we're good.
All right.
We'll so we will yeah, look forward to doing that with you, Rachel. Thank you. I'm just in moving forward here because I know Christy, you need to leave, and so I wanted to forward in our agenda. Near-term committee calendar is our next item up. We were holding, as we were preparing our analysis of alternatives for the select board, we had meetings very frequently last year, culminating in that report. We had talked earlier last year about going to monthly meetings following the report. So that's where we are now. Any discussion, or shall we, I would propose that we consider going to a monthly schedule.
that sounds good.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion or anything on that. We'll just we'll get that schedule put together. All right, and you know, we'll do it on monthly centers. We're doing one here in the middle of January, so I'd propose the next meeting would be middle of February.
Okay.
And let's coordinate outside of here a date that works in everybody's schedule. I know today came up, worked out, and if we can find a set time per week, that would be great. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
Right now you're doing procedural stuff. Pete,
Yep.
at some point here, I don't know if it's the right time. I haven't been around with you guys for a while on these calls, and I just was wondering if you could give us, if we could discuss a little update of what had happened and didn't happen. I don't know if that's relevant to Rachel, and I don't know where you want to do it. I just hope we can discuss that for a few minutes when it's appropriate in this thing.
Sure. Why don't we do that as soon as we get done with, we'll do that in the other business on item 6. I just wanted to, before, because I know we're about to lose Christy here. But yes, we can do that. Moving on, approval of the minutes from our that were provided by Christy for the August 23rd meeting. Christy, you saw my comments?
I did. Yes.
Are those?
Yeah, those were fine. Yeah, I did. I put in the edits.
Okay.
And I didn't know if we wanted to include the letter that we wrote to the select board in this set of minutes, or if we wanted to include that as an attachment.
Well, as the committee clerk or secretary, I'll defer to your judgment on that. I think the minutes should at least state that I believe we agreed that we would write to the select board in the August 23rd meeting, and then we did write to them on the 26th. If you'd, is it appropriate given that it's January now, is it appropriate to include a copy of that letter just for historic purposes, or do you?
I know normally when we were meeting every 2 weeks, and then every outreach we did got put into the minutes, and I always thought that was very helpful. So, okay, let's do it.
All right. So I'm hearing a motion to approve the minutes as edited with the addition of the mention of the letter that we voted on to provide a letter to the select board, and attaching that letter to the minutes.
Mhm.
Is that the motion? Okay.
Yeah. I second that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Approving the minutes, great. Okay. Excellent. And now we're on to other business. So that's where Steve wanted to discuss where we are with the bikeway selection process. The committee provided its analysis of alternatives to the select board and briefed it to them. And we remain ready to assist the select board in moving forward. The select board represents the town, though, to the state.
Can I ask you a question, Pete?
Please.
So as I recall reading the report, it's been a little while now, but there were two principal paths that were proposed. One was essentially following the power lines through the national seashore, and that seemed to be a non-starter. And the second one was a path going underneath the power lines, essentially just following north the DCR path along the left side, the west side of the power lines, which I recall was the J2 or whatever was the second option. And when I was reading is that correct, Pete? That's my recollection.
Well,
Yeah, I wouldn't describe them quite that way, but there were two. You're right. There were about 26 different alternatives that were assessed, and there were two that stood out. Of course, they were not two that were selected by the committee. They were two that came out of the computational analysis, and so we were obligated at that point to recommend those as the top scoring alternatives to the select board. Christy, you were going to say something here?
yeah, I just wanted to think about, first of all, that there were 28 options, Steve, and
Okay.
and that those were then rated, and you can see. So I don't ever want people to think of it as only two options. Those were just, we utilized the state
Yeah, no, I understand, Christy.
of
I did read it.
assessing safety.
So
Yeah. So they're
I just wanted to suss out.
the select board, yeah.
Yeah.
So the select board now has that information, and they have all those scores, so they could see, oh, well, we're not into this highest rating one, but they can go down. There's some that are just 2 points below. So I just hate to
Well,
discussion
yeah,
about two.
but in the report, those first two got quite a lot of discussion, right?
Yeah.
And I actually would just like to suss that out a little, get a little more clarity around those, because those two were not crazy, right? The one just going up the national seashore side of the power lines, and the other one going up the west side of the power lines, which is essentially the same thing as a DCR trail south of here, right? So
Well, yeah, again, I wouldn't describe it that way. There were two, the reason those two, when we say they were the top scorers, one was the top scorer overall, and that's the one that I believe you correctly described as going up the right-hand side of the power line.
right.
It's either, power lines or seashore along that boundary there.
Right.
The other route was, okay, if we were to avoid the seashore entirely, what's the best scoring route? And that was the other route. And the key there was that it went as far as Gull Pond Road and then diverted to Route 6. That was its defined.
Yeah, I mean,
distinguishing characteristic.
Yeah, Gull Pond Road is a tricky animal to bike on there, but just the what struck me as the one that seemed most straightforward is
Mhm.
really continuation across up the left-hand side of the power lines as far as you can go, right? And that's very DCR. It's the same model that they're using from from Old Kings Highway, from Old County Road, whichever it is there, all the way down, right? South, that's the model. The DCR trail just essentially runs up the left-hand side of the power lines. And so
No,
that
we
would be,
scored that alternative along with the others going up the left side of the power lines, and its score is in the analysis, which is publicly available.
Yeah.
I understand all that. Pete, my question is, when I looked at that, that's a fairly sensible route, continuing the same philosophy of the DC or the rail trail south of Wellfleet. It's in the same philosophical set, and that I think that's fine. My question about it was, I checked the property lines there, and it looks to me like that property where the power lines run is actually owned by the houses on the left-hand side of the,
Mhm.
That's right.
right? So there's an easement there of some sort.
Yeah,
And-
we looked at the assessor maps as we were looking at the alternatives. Yeah.
And so just my question there was, did you guys look at, because I don't recall having seen it in the report, the legal requirements of getting an approval to do something there, right? Does the power company, whoever, is that Eversource? I don't know who owns those, but do they have the right to construct a road there? Or does that need to be, do you need to go property by property and get the right to do so?
Well, none of us are lawyers, and there are processes that the state would use, say, to do something, to put in a a state-sponsored route. We did try talking with Eversource. They did not respond, but the again, what we were doing is a feasibility study of looking at which routes, again, taking public inputs on and recommendations on routes, and then doing a computational analysis based on goals and objectives derived from national sources. The next step, of course, well, there are some others, and Christy, jump in here because I know you've done a lot of thinking about this. The next step is to look at things like legality of how you move forward, and of course, as we included in our information on our website in the frequently asked questions portion, there's a section there which says basically, how are you going to talk with potential abutters of any alternative route? And we said, well, that's going to be a process that the town has to do, and we would support that process, but that would be, again, that goes to something that the town government would have to do. Christy?
Yeah, I think you're right that, Steve, we're all curious, but we're waiting to hear from the select board. They're really in charge of representing the town's interests. We just gave the information. And so for those next steps, we would want the select board to say, hey, we're interested in this. Here's what we can do. Could you do this? And we'd want them, and we'd also rely on both the state, but also Cape Cod Commission. They're very savvy and they're the experts here. So we're just kind of, we're all asking the same questions. We're all really curious, but you're thinking next steps too, and we don't have the answer. I don't. I wish I understood, and I wish we could just,
The reason I bring it up, right, is because now we've got pots of money floating around Washington that don't appear to be entirely well tended.
Mhm.
And that if someone stood up and say, gosh, could I have some of that?
Mhm.
It seems to me that we are in perhaps an unusually accommodating environment.
And it goes right by the school. Sorry to interrupt.
gosh.
Yes,
Sure.
like yeah.
So I was just curious because it seems like a good time to say, oh, we need your money. And if you went to Eversource and said, well, maybe we do a dual use path. I know that the DCR loves everything exclusive, but the truth of the matter is that parts of the DCR path are in fact on narrow public roads. Okay, so So there are, I know they like the gold standard. Good God knows that the parking lot at LeConte Hollow, at the LeConte Road is like spectacular and gold plated. I was there yesterday. But there are ways to do that where we would share a trail, perhaps with utility trucks, because there really aren't a lot of utility trucks there, right?
Mhm.
So there are solutions there that may not be ideal, but maybe really pretty good, right? And right now we may have some money lying around, and sometimes the presence of money lying around can motivate people to solve problems. So that was.
Steve, we can perhaps add this as an agenda topic to a subsequent meeting. Let me say, first of all, I applaud. I mean, you've obviously done some thinking about this, and I know that you're definitely attuned to town issues, and we applaud that.
Jesus, I read the paper. I read the paper.
Yeah. Now, you're right, and I think we pointed out in our, well, I know we pointed out in our report, there are a number of sources of funding, and in fact, we, before the report came out, those were highlighted to the select board as well. You know, emails with web links. The federal government and DOT in particular they're funding some very large scale programs around the country where funding is available for various agencies, whether they're federal or state, to apply for money for the kinds of things that it would seem that our, you know, a bikeway through on the Outer Cape would be appropriate for getting some of that funding, right?
Yeah,
we agree.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can have decision led or you can have money led, right? If I want to move bureaucracies, and I don't know, money led could be it could be a you know, appealing to someone. Oh, look, there's this pot of money, if only we applied for it. And sometimes it's easier to do projects like that than to start with a principled analysis and then try to get it funded.
Right. So we've tried to one objective of our report was to provide good hard information for the town so that they could move forward. And you know, so having provided that information, also having provided we did a bit of investigation along the lines of what you've done, looking at funding sources coming out of Washington, because you're right. I mean, there are some new opportunities just in the last year. And
I'm so sorry to interrupt you guys. I'm gonna click off.
Okay.
But it's been nice seeing everyone, and Ned, take care. I didn't see you, but I heard you. It's good to hear you.
I don't know why I'm not showing up, but
let me jump in, Steve. It's an interesting discussion, but just in the interest of the committee, if we could perhaps carry on a conversation.
We can do it another time. Could I add just two quick things that we don't have to pursue, but just let you know, in terms of safe biking past the schools, right? We have lots of sand roads here, which are safe to bike on. They need to be upgraded. And because a lot of them have sand problems, which I have some very nice pictures of me falling over, and some of them it's entertaining. And the second is that I did actually do the market work assessing who will be on these trails. So I think we're in a position now, if we want to know who will use the Wellfleet bike trails, I can give you a pretty good breakdown almost by time of day, by demographics, by age. And I will tell you, shockingly, almost half of them will be over 50. So that's what I can tell you right now. I won't pursue anything more. I just thought I'd throw those ideas out there.
Just as a point of clarification for anybody listening to this meeting, because Steve, as a member of the public, I mean, you can obviously make any comment you want. I wanted to make it clear, our committee is not proposing that we take sand roads that Wellfleet is known for, but we're not proposing paving those. But I understand the spirit of your
I'm not proposing
suggestion.
paving them either. I'm not proposing paving them either, Pete. I'm proposing upgrading them. Upgrading is 4 different things. It's taking out roots, it's taking out height differences, and most importantly, it's making sure there's no big soft sand patches, because that's what makes it unpassable for a bike.
I just want to make it abundantly clear to anybody listening that we have never, as a committee, discussed having a transforming our beloved town in a sense of creating a network of paved paths or anything, because I know that that is a concern that some may have. And I just want to make it clear that we've been trying to identify a number of alternatives. And if one looks at our report and sees all these different alternatives, they need to understand we're not proposing all of them. It's simply a map of all the alternatives that the public presented to us. And we were looking for a good route. So thank you. Any other comments? Steve, thanks for participating. If there's no other business, then in the interest of time, and Christy, I understand you need to leave, I will propose that we adjourn. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah, thank
Rachel.
you. Nice meeting you all.
Yep.